I'm Brittany, this is Lanjen, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch and read gay things. We are starting, beginning, opening, for the very first time, Volume 9 of Erha. We kind of last left off with the promise of an interrogation of Moran and a sentencing a few days later. Shimei was like super at ease because everything was going according to plan. Tae Jun was being very Phantom of the Opera. It was a lot last stream. And now we get to continue. We read for a couple of hours. We take a break around halfway through. And I didn't visit Mike again today. I put a post-it note right where I cannot miss it. And I did it during the book chat so they can vouch for me. I did it. It's there. It's not just a reminder. It's a reminder that's in my face. So that from now on, I will remember to go see my good friend Mike before I read this. But today is not that day. And just a couple of things before we begin. One, they are doing a weird thing with your name in the chat now, to where it has to be your handle. It has to be your @ handle and not a name. And you don't get like emojis in your name now. It's very sad. I am so sorry. But also I'm really glad that no one's changed their icons, because at least I can kind of go off of that and any names that were similar in the first place. Don't know why they did that. Couldn't tell you. Not a single clue. A while back, I think during volume 7 into 8, we did a giveaway for the first book in Captive Prince, and I drew a winner, and there is a winner whose name I would know if I saw it, but I cannot remember. And they replied, or they commented saying, hey, I'm the one who won, and I can no longer find that comment. And I went prowling for it. I sifted through the comments of the videos going back like umpteen bajillion different streams, and I could not find it. So if you are that person, I'll know your name when I see it, I swear. But if you wave your hand one more time, I can actually get that book to you. And also, I'm so sorry. That came from before the medication. Also, YouTube has a new thing that's being rolled out or will happen, where like you get to hype videos for the first 7 days that a video is up. People are allowed to like hype a video for free like 3 times a week. And it's supposed to be a way to help boost smaller creators, because like it'll get them visible on some tab somewhere in the exploration section of YouTube and all that jazz. It actually sounds pretty nifty. I don't know how it will be like executed, but it sounds pretty nifty. So whenever I see that option pop up on YouTube, I'll let you guys know, because that would be deeply helpful. That does actually sound like a good idea from YouTube to try to help smaller creators. It's kind of hilarious that I think from the way they worded their email to me that they define smaller creators as people with 500,000 subscribers or fewer. That's a punchline. But other than that, it actually seems like their heart is in the right place about this. So I may be talking about that. That may become like and hype or something. I don't know. But they're doing that, and that's helpful. Was there anything else? Trigger warnings are down in the description box for anyone who needs them. There's also an evergreen link down to the public version of the Gaywatch Discord if you would like to have more chats about queer bookish things. We are starting on probably page 11, because that's usually when these volumes start. It is. I'm correct. So we're starting on page 11. You know, I asked the question in the book chat stream if we were going to get a time jump to, or just a focus jump to Mo Run's sentencing, interrogation, and all of that, or if we were going to continue with maybe the end of Wushan Palace or whatever the heck. We're just floating the idea. Well, the title of chapter 270, where we're starting today, is called Judgment Day. So, I think we're leaving Taisha and June for the time being. We're also not going to talk about the cover of this one. It's beautiful. We're not going to talk about it. All right. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. At dawn on the 3rd, Shimei came to the secret chamber. Taisha and June was already dressed, his tall, broad-shouldered figure clad in his ever-present black robes and combat armor. A gleaming silver compartment for hidden weapons was fastened at his slender waist. He wore black dragonskin gloves, beneath which were strapped several more concealed weapons. He looked up at Shimei's entrance, his gaze cold. You came. Get ready. We're going to Tianyin Pavilion. This venerable one is ready. Let's go. Shimei assessed him. What about Chuaning? I gave him the medicine. He's asleep. Despite nodding, Shimei stepped further into the room to check, Taisha and June right on his heels. After taking Chu Waning's pulse, Shimei said, He'll recover his strength over the next few days. We should be careful. Shimei shot him a glance. Oh, excuse me. I just totally skipped over a line because it occurred to me that the first words out of Taisha and June's mouth being like, you came, is deeply fucking funny. Taisha and June was unintimidated by Chu Waning's strength. What about his memories? He asked. Shimei shot him a glance. He'll recover his memories too. Ignoring Taisha and June's look of displeasure, Shimei rose to his feet. He lit some tranquilizing incense and set it to diffuse through the room, preventing Chu Waning from waking and disrupting his plans. Finally, he stepped out of the room and cast a powerful ward on the floor. Taisha and June furrowed his brow. Why bother? The mountain's deserted except for Nangong Lu, and he thinks he's a child. There's no one to break him out. A thief in the family is hardest to guard against, came Shimei's impassive reply. Who? Nobody you've met. Shimei sighed. But someone I know very, very well. Enough. Let's go. What the fuck does that mean? What the fuck? Are we talking about the Shimei? Since we're dealing with Wabinan at the moment, are we talking about Shimei? Huh. The two of them departed, leaving Chu Waning alone in the austere stone chamber. He was unconscious again, his mind sifting through the memories of 2 lifetimes. Yet that wasn't all. Even Shimei hadn't realized the true reason Chu Waning's recovery was so drawn out. It wasn't because his physical health was poor. It was because the memories he was recovering weren't limited to his own. For as long as half of his earth soul had inhabited Mo Run's body, it had mingled with Mo Run's souls day in and day out. Leave it to these bitches to literally have mingling souls. When this soul fragment returned at last to Chu Waning, it brought with it many of Mo Run's deepest memories. At that moment, these memories were flooding Chu Waning's mind, filling his dreams with shattered fragments of past. First, he dreamed of a disheveled child in a mass grave. The child was wailing over a woman's decayed corpse, his face a mess of tears and snot. Mom? Mom! Someone! Anyone! Help! Come and bury me too! Please! Bury me too! He dreamed of the house of drunken jade in Shangtan. Mo Run, beaten black and blue, curled up in a cage meant for a dog. A golden beast-shaped burner filled with resin incense had been left in the warm room, suffusing the air with heavy fragrance. The child locked in the cage had nothing to eat or drink. He didn't even have enough space to turn around. In the room was another boy of similar age. He leered at Mo Run. "Look at you now. Still want to play the hero? Well, I say you're nothing but a joke. You'll never be anything but a pathetic joke." Spittle flew at him, and the young Mo Run closed his eyes. Chu Wanning's lashes trembled too. Mo Run. He dreamed of dancing flames, writhing through the building like vengeful ghosts. Shouts and cries echoed through the halls as the burning rafters collapsed one after another. Someone screamed in the billowing black smoke. The teenaged Mo Run sat within the towering fire, looking down with a stony expression. A blood-stained machete lay across his lap, and he was slowly peeling a bunch of grapes. So he's not just gonna know everything. He's gonna know everything. Jesus. Mom, it's over. Mo Run appeared exceedingly calm. But I won't get to see you again. I've killed people. My hands are covered in blood. I'll go to hell when I die, Mom. I won't ever see you again. Mo Run. Mo Run. The scene before him brightened. Chu Wanning saw a woman with soft features and eyes that sloped gently upward at their outer corners. Who was she? Her face bore some slight resemblance to his own, Chu Wanning thought. A likeness especially clear when she looked down in earnest concentration as she mended a coarsely woven garment. The person closest to morally, spiritually, and ethically being as beautiful and good as Mo Run's mother looks like her. A little bit. Just enough. That would be the indicator that this is the character that's the closest to. I see you, Meat Bun. I see you. Mama, the child called, soft as a mosquito's buzz. The woman looked up, then flashed a smile. What are you doing up? I had a bad dream. My tummy hurts. I'm hungry. The woman put down the garment and opened her arms. Another bad dream, she chuckled softly. Don't be afraid, Ranair. Mama will hold you. Ranair. Mo Run. Chu Wanning closed his eyes. His heart was seized by an ache he couldn't put into words. It hurt too much. The scene he saw seemed a bleak and Spartan existence, one of interminable suffering. Mama. It was the first time Chu Wanning had seen Mo Run's mother. Suddenly he understood why little Mo Run had instinctively grabbed at his hem outside Wu Bei Temple, trusting him, begging him for succor. He understood why that same youth had walked up to him before the heaven-piercing tower and implored him to be his teacher. The young man then had said with a smile, because he looks the nicest and gentlest. I made some sort of domino analogy with Meat Bun at some point during all of this. And it has now just occurred to me that having started volume 9 of 11, we're going to start to see what the dominoes look like when they start falling. Back then, everyone had laughed at Mo Run behind his back, calling him blind, a shameless suck-up. But that wasn't true. It wasn't true at all. He wasn't blind or a suck-up, but he couldn't speak the truth out loud. He couldn't make a scene or take Chu Waning's hand and tell him, "Xianjun, when you glance downward, you remind me of the person who loved me more than anyone else in this world. But she's gone, so could you please pay attention to me? Could you please spare me another glance in her stead? I miss her so much." Mo Run couldn't say any of this. He could only suppress the ache in his chest and blink back the tears in his eyes. He could only endure Chu Waning's indifference and disregard. He chased after him, laughing with a feigned nonchalance that fooled everyone. That'd be part of the reason why, probably a big part of the reason, why he responded the way he did to Chu Waning's indifference. No one could know of his past. No one could share in his pain. All he could do was smile brilliantly beneath the heaven-piercing tower. A smile too passionate, too hungry, hiding an inexhaustible longing in its corners. A smile that would end up scalding Chu Waning at a touch. That's a scene break. We started on page 11. We're on the top of page 15. Mo Run opened his eyes. He was no longer on Xishang Peak. Instead, he found himself in a tiny cell, gray and dim. The only light came through a narrow hatch for food near the bottom of the black iron door. The ceiling over his head was engraved with a set of scales. A prison. This was the world's most hallowed temple of justice, the foremost court of law, which stood apart from the 10 great sects. Tianyin Pavilion. He lay in his cell, throat burning, lips dry and cracked. His surroundings were so quiet he could hear the desolate whisper of the wind, and beneath it, the uneasy chatter of his subconscious. It was a long time before he managed to gather his awareness. In truth, he'd always been a little surprised such a day had never come in the past life. But fate had been generous to him, allowing him to drift along for 2 lifetimes. It was only now that it finally sought him out to answer for his crimes. Mo Run, time to eat. Time's passage was murky here. He didn't know how long he'd lain awake before he heard footsteps and saw a tray of food pushed through the hatch. Fried Yoshuan pancake and a bowl of soup. Mo Run didn't get up. The Tianyin Pavilion attendant said nothing more. Their crisp footfalls quickly faded into the distance. How was Chu Waning doing now? And what of Xishang Peak? What happened to those ruined chess pieces after the battle? Dazed and weary, he returned again and again to the same 3 questions. It was a long while before he accepted that no one would give him answers. He was a prisoner now. He sat up. His chest throbbed dully, and his entire body felt weak. The spiritual energy that had surged through him for as long as he could remember had vanished entirely. Leaning against the wall, he stared off into space. So this was how it felt to break one's spiritual core. To be unable to summon a spiritual weapon, powerless to use any techniques. Like a surf-riding coon without its great tail, or a cloud-dwelling pung stripped of its wings. Mo Run curled up in a corner, his dark eyes blank and unseeing. He suddenly felt awful, but not because of his own predicament. He'd remembered Chu Waning in the past lifetime. As fate would have it, in this lifetime, he'd finally come to understand Chu Waning's helplessness and pain in those years. He wished he could apologize to that version of Chu Waning, but it was too late. He could never go back. Unless, of course, Chu Waning remembers both timelines, but we can't talk about that right now. Because Mo Run doesn't know shit about shit. The pancake and soup in his cell went from hot to lukewarm to cold. Eventually, he ate. The entire time he was left in isolation. He was a child locked up in a dog cage again. Though this room was much nicer than that cage had been, here he could at least comfortably stretch his limbs. He lay in the darkness, drifting between sleep and wakefulness, though there was little difference. Within these walls, it was like he was already dead. Muzzily, Mo-Run wondered, what if he had in fact died? What if this entire lifetime was no more than a beautiful dream, a brief reverie after he lay down in the coffin beneath the heaven-piercing tower, in the moments before his soul scattered? Perhaps all 32 years of his life had flashed before his eyes, a circus of color and emotion, before everything withered to the bones in a grave. The corners of his lips quirked up, and a smile ghosted over his face. If only that were the truth. How wonderful would it be? He was so tired. He'd been pressing forward and struggling for so long. He didn't care if it was hell or the mortal realm that lay before him. He just wanted to rest. His heart had been reduced to a shambles, turning aged and decrepit since Chuaning's death in the past life. He'd spent all these years trying to do good, trying to make up for it. He'd searched for the medicine that could reverse this decay, but he'd never found it. He'd fought and begged for so very long, ceaselessly and shamelessly, but he was tired of fighting, tired of begging. Over his lifetime, he'd lost his mother and his Shizun, his friends and his lover, his stolen family, and his false renown. Now he'd lost his spiritual core as well. But he had been brought to Tianyin Pavilion nonetheless. Broken as he was, he couldn't escape the cultivation realm's harshest punishment. He'd finally lost all hope. He knew he wouldn't be forgiven. He, Moeyu, was an ugly, lopsided mountain. His wounds had been blanketed in pure white snow. But now the snow had melted, and he had nowhere left to hide. Everything, his darkness, his monstrousness, had been laid bare. He could never be Mo Zongxue. Since the moment his hands were stained with the blood of innocence, he was doomed only ever to be Emperor Taishanjin. He was a vicious killer, a terrifying beast. He deserved to die. The world would rejoice at his demise. That's a scene break. We desperately listen, when we finally get Mo-Run and Chuaning in the same place at the same time, you know, a lot of emotions will be felt. Like, the first thing that, we want is, it's like, sort out enough shit to climb on top of each other and get it over with already. But right behind that impulse during the big reunion is going to be the sheer and utter soul-burning need for Chuaning to just sit Mo-Run down and explain everything. I don't care where they have to go to do it. They could dig a 20-foot hole to hide themselves in while it happens. But I need them to sit down uninterrupted and have Chuaning just tell Mo-Run a couple things. Give him the update. Mo-Run's experience is like light years behind. When the cell door opened at last, He didn't know how many days he'd spent inside. 2 Tianyin Pavilion disciples strode into the room. Without a word, they bound him with immortal binding ropes, then yanked him upright and dragged him through the door. They marched him down a long, pitch-dark hallway. "How are they doing?" Mo-Run rasped with difficulty. They were the first words he'd spoken in days. Neither of his escorts answered him. We are all assuming that he's asking about his family, right? His family. The people that are still his family, no matter what, blood, his family. We know who his family. I'm all right. At the end of the hallway, daylight burst in. Mo-Run flinched under that dazzling light like a dragon that had cowered too long in the dark, eyes blinded and talons rotten. He couldn't bear its brilliance. He wanted to cover his eyes, but his hands were bound. All he could do was lower his head, tears welling under his dark lashes. His eyes and ears were muddled. He didn't know where he was. Only his sense of smell remained sharp. He could smell the wind, the crowd, the flowers and trees on the breeze. Someone pushed him from behind. Hesitant, he stumbled forward. Gradually, his ears adjusted to the clamor. He could hear the din of many people talking, their conversations rushing over him like a tide. The waves could wash away mud, yes, but they could also drown a man. Mo-Run felt like he couldn't catch his breath. He was weak, so terribly weak. Kneel. His handler shoved him down. He knelt. The bright sun shone down from on high, casting its light over his haggard face. He hadn't expected it to be such a beautiful day. So this is Mo Zongxue. Never thought we'd see him interrogated at Tianyin Pavilion. You really can't judge a man based on appearances. Mo-Run's ears buzzed. He could make out some hazy shapes in his field of view, but nothing was clear. He peered out at the scene before him through half-lidded eyes, shaded by his lashes. It was the same interrogation platform he remembered from when he'd come with Shui Jingyang and Shui Meng to watch a trial many years ago. But now he was no longer a spectator, but the criminal on display. The people beneath the platform bunched and jostled like a pond full of carp. They were commoners and wandering cultivators who'd come to Tianyin Pavilion to watch the proceedings. Mo-Run couldn't make out their faces or read their expressions. In his blurred vision, those heads whispering back and forth became an undulating field of wheat. He looked up. High walls loomed on all sides, with viewing platforms perched atop. Visitors from all the great sects sat upon them. He spotted the green of Baton Manor, the red of Huohuang Manor Pavilion, the yellow of Wubei Temple. His heart clenched. How strange that he could feel pain. And there, an expanse of silver and blue, the largest and calmest contingent in the stands, Xisheng Peak. He blinked. Ignoring his stinging eyes, he focused his gaze on them with all the concentration he could muster. But still he couldn't see. He couldn't see where Shui Jingyang was, couldn't pick out Shui Meng or the Tenlong Elder or the Xuanji Elder. Couldn't find Madame Wang. On the interrogation platform, at the end of it all, he still couldn't see the people who mattered to him the most. Mo-Run of Xisheng Peak, illegitimate son of Nengongyan, Lord of Rufeng Sect's 9th city. Aided by a voice amplifying technique, Mu Yanli's crisp words floated above the din. We must conduct a stringent investigation, delivering neither penalty nor pardon in error. Mo-Run couldn't parse any of it. Her sharp, clear voice was too piercing for someone who'd languished in seclusion as long as he had. Mu Yanli spoke steadily. Scattered phrases drifted into Mo-Run's ears, things like, a murderer must pay with his life, harboring sinister motives, and cultivating forbidden techniques. Finally, he heard her say, it is the duty of Tianyin Pavilion to purge criminals from our society and uphold the principles of justice. A Tianyin Pavilion disciple walked up to Mo Run, a black silhouette against the blazing sun. Open your mouth. When Mo Run didn't react, the disciple clicked his tongue. He wrenched open Mo Run's jaw and poured a jug of bitter, salty medicine down his throat. Did it have to be those characteristics? Mo Run choked and broke into violent coughing. It had been days since he'd eaten, and the caustic mixture burned like fire all the way down. He felt his stomach spasming, as if he was about to vomit. The disciple grabbed him around the neck, forcing him to remain still and swallow the rest. The ice-cold medicine felt like a snake slithering into his belly, poised to rend him open from within. Mo Run's face was ashen. He wanted badly to throw up, but he wasn't willing to voice any weakness or plead for mercy. He didn't even allow his tears to fall. He'd lived half his days in poverty, enduring too many miseries to name, but that didn't mean he lacked self-respect. Once he swallowed the last drop, the disciple released him. He wheezed for air. His weariness was plain. His wings drooped. But he still had all the viciousness of a lone falcon on the verge of death. The Tianyin Pavilion disciple turned to the assembly with an explanation. The draught of confession. Mo Run's lips were gray, but as he looked down, he couldn't help but chuckle. The draught of confession. Of course he knew about the draught of confession. Only criminals tried by Tianyin Pavilion were forced to take this tonic. It never touched the lips of an innocent. Those who drank it would feel their awareness fade, after which they would confess all the wrongs they'd committed in life. Because that would include the Taishanjun of it all. The Tianyin disciple approached Mo Run and tapped him on the lips, casting a voice-amplifying spell so everyone could hear him. Mo Run closed his eyes, knitting his brows. He tried to resist it, but the pain sent tremors through his body, making his chains clank dully. His face was bloodless, and his eyes slowly rolled up into their sockets. He fell prostrate onto the platform, twitching and convulsing. He was conscious, but his mind was clear one moment, clouded the next. He fought the medicine with every fiber of his being, but it was impossible. I've killed people, he choked out at last, closing his eyes in agony. His pathetically ragged voice resounded through every corner of the square. The crowd went quiet, all eyes fixed upon the man on the platform. Mu Yanli shot him a look of utmost disdain. How many have you killed? Too many. I can't remember. Below the platform, some of the commoners began to pale. How old were you when you first killed? 15. Was it a cultivator or a commoner? A commoner. Did you kill for vengeance or self-defense? Both. The two of them traded questions and answers. Many of those watching had only come for the spectacle with no knowledge of the prisoner's circumstances. Hearing that Mo Run had murdered for revenge at 15, then killed so many people he couldn't remember the number, they were shocked and furious. We're not going to get details. Not that Mo Run knows anything. What, like Mo Run can be like, a flower was planted in my chip. Who'd have thought the famed Mozongsha was a monster who kills without batting an eye? Terrifying. He's a real menace. I was too scared to kill a chicken when I was 15, but he was already murdering people. What a brute. Mu Yanli commanded coldly, ignoring the clamor. Continue recounting your crimes. Every muscle in Mo Run's body was taut with strain, but he found himself powerless to resist. He said hoarsely, I assumed someone else's identity. I pretended to be the nephew of Xishang Peak's leader. For how long? 8 years. Continue. Mo Run said slowly, I cultivated the 3 forbidden techniques. Zhenlong chess formation. At this, worry passed over the faces of many of the cultivators sitting on the platforms above. I'm having Wei Wuxian flashbacks. Is anyone else having Wei Wuxian flashbacks? Someone glowered in Xishang Peak's direction and said scathingly, Didn't Shui Jingyang want to pardon this beast? I knew the draught of confession would bring out the truth. To think Shui Jingyang tried to stop Tianyan Pavilion from questioning Mo Run. The old fool's been so thoroughly hoodwinked he doesn't even want justice for his nephew's death. Now we all know Xishang Peak has a disciple who's been learning forbidden techniques. Surely the sect should be disbanded. What's the point of letting them continue? So they can nurture more evil? They're going to lose everything, aren't they? In all of this, Xishang Peak's going to be, like, gone. And Shui Jingyang and Shui Meng and Madame Wang, if they get out alive, which, let's be real, is far from a sure thing, they will be ruined. Because they know and love and therefore understandingly protect Mo Run. That's what I've been saying all along. I knew he was the criminal type. When he shattered his core to save us at Xishang Peak, it was just a ploy to win our trust. Thank goodness we didn't let him go. That's right. He was trying to save his own skin. With his abilities, so what if his core is ruined? He probably knows some deviant method to heal himself. We didn't even know how much danger we were in. If it wasn't for the persistence of Tianyan Pavilion's master, we might have let this degenerate walk free. Could it be that since Shimei is pathetic and can't offer anyone anything at any time or timeline, could it be that he's doing this so that, like, just Mo Run will be executed because Shimei can't kill him himself? And so, of course, he's coming to see the show. A massive set of scales sat atop the interrogation platform, haloed in shimmering gold, a one-of-a-kind holy implement. The scales weighed over a ton and had stood on the platform for thousands of years, since Tianyan Pavilion's founding days. It was said this device had been left behind by the gods, that it would consider all the mortal realm's sins and punishments, and render the soundest judgment. Before Mo Run had begun to speak, Mu Yanli had commanded one of her disciples to produce a weight made of golden spiritual energy and place it on the scales. The moment it landed in the pan, that delicate golden weight swiftly expanded. As one side of the scales sank low, the other floated upward, its position corresponding to a specific punishment. When Mo Run spoke of his first crime, the scales hovered at carve out the spiritual core. But when he mentioned the Zhenlong chess formation, they shot to the highest position. Sunder the souls. Up in the stands, the blood drained from Shui Meng's face. Sunder the souls, he mumbled. That would mean that there would never again be another Mo Wei Yu, another Mo Run, neither in heaven nor on earth. Shui Meng would never again see that brother of his, whether real or false, no matter how many times the wheel of reincarnation rotated. His mind was blank, his hands frozen. Shui Jingyang rose solemnly and addressed Mu Yanli. Since Tenyan Pavilion was founded, no one has ever received the punishment of having their souls sundered. Pavilion Master Mu, I wonder if you've lost sight of justice. Haha! That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of the chapter. He's totally gonna die. He's totally gonna die. He's gonna die. He's so dead. He's so dead. Madame Wang and Shui Meng, maybe they get out of this. Shui Jingyang is so... He's so dead. Which would be impressive, because normally I can clock a doomed father figure at like 1,000 paces. All right. Oh God, we're on page 25 for chapter 271, which is called Final Interrogation. Let me check page numbers real quick. Is that 25? Yeah, it's kind of your standard 10 pages. All right. At this, someone from another sect leapt up in anger. Could Xishang Peak please shut up? Your disciple's been learning the Zhenlong chess formation. He's violated the most basic precepts of the cultivation realm. Your sorry excuse for a sect should be dissolved and left to rot. Now's not the time to bicker, but can't you at least show a little self-awareness? Shui Jingyang, you're still speaking up for him? Could it be that you were in on it too? Angry chatter buzzed all around. Dear God. Now it's just General Moto Zusha flashbacks. Such was the fate of families and sects alike. If any one of their number proved to be godly, all were elevated along with them. But as soon as one person committed some reprehensible act, the entire group was viewed as a breeding ground for evil. Shui Jingyang, bare minimum, is a fucking dead man. These scales weigh his sins. This alone does not decide his sentence. Mu Yanli's tone was matter-of-fact. She made no accusations against Xishang Peak. Shui Jungmen, no need to fret. After weighing his sins, we will also consider his merits. Only after these are factored in will the final verdict be rendered. Okay. Well, that's good at least. Although... like, all right, so we're literally weighing him on the scales. Okay. Both sins and merits will be weighed. The sin pile is falsely inflated, just to tell the quick version of that story. And the merits pile will be great, but one could somehow be like fucked with or something like that. Even if, you know, Hua Binan were to show up and be like, well, actually, etc., 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 about this one good thing he did, so then like that's not counted. That kind of fuckery. She turned her gaze upon Moran again. Continue your confession, she said coldly. I've trespassed against my teacher. trespassed against your teacher. These words were baffling to others, but Mo-Run felt as though his heart was on trying to channel the rage. These words were baffling to others, but Mo-Run felt as though his heart was on fire. These were crimes from his past life. The draught of confession could force even the sins of the past life from his throat. Well, yeah. It's one of those things, kind of like a lie detector test. What it really judges is what you genuinely believe to be true. But he didn't want to say it. He didn't want to. Would he be made to describe in front of all these people how he'd humiliated Chuaning a lifetime ago? How he'd held him prisoner? How he'd married him and made him a consort? How he'd broken that lofty and proud man and finally driven him to his death? He didn't want to say it. Mo-Run was certain his own end was imminent, but Chuaning still had many years ahead of him. As a spirit of the sacred tree, he was possessed of fathomless talent and the purest spiritual energy. Mo-Run hoped Chuaning could live on peacefully after this. When the time came, surely he'd ascend to immortality. Never again would he endure the pain of reincarnation or the suffering of love. Listen. I tried to start this sitting back and being chill, and that's not working. So excuse me, as the mic might make some sounds as I adjust it. But, like, somebody write that fucking down. But then also, never say that to me again. Hang on. A full actual mic adjustment is necessary. Okay. All right. We're like 15 pages into the volume, by the way. We haven't hit the 20s or anything like that. It's still new. It's still fresh. We haven't gotten like anywhere yet. Not at all. Anyway. Where the fuck am I? There I am. His Shizin was so good, so pure. Mo-Run wanted to protect him. He couldn't let anyone know they were involved, that there was anything between them. No one could be allowed to form the impression that Chuaning was dirty, that he'd been stained with Taishanjun's blood and filth. He had to protect him. He had to. That flame was blazing in his chest, an awful, consuming pain. He could vaguely hear Mu Yanli's frigid voice asking the question, "What do you mean you trespassed against your teacher?" He wouldn't answer. He refused to say. His fingertips had been scraped raw against the sandstone platform, and his forehead was scarlet with blood. He hunched over on the ground, panting like a fish dying upon the riverbank. He wouldn't say a word. Resisting the draught of confession was not unlike resisting Tianwen. As long as he gritted his teeth with all his might, he could endure it. Under Tianyin Pavilion's ruthless questioning, beneath the staring crowd, he squirmed and howled like a trapped beast. The torment was unimaginable. Most people wouldn't stand a chance against Tianwen, and this pain was 1,000 times worse. He felt like a pair of invisible hands was wringing out his entrails, like his innards were being torn to shreds, like he was covered in open wounds doused with salt water. It was an agony that burned like fire, boring into his bones. Mu Yanli's voice was distant, as though it came to him across a vast ocean. "You say you trespassed against your teacher. What do you mean by this? Speak." But Mo-Run refused. He bit through his tongue and his lips. His mouth filled with blood, but his tears did not fall. As he had during those 7 days he'd spent locked in the dog cage, he wouldn't cry. His tears would only be one more thing for the audience to laugh at. No one would pity him, and neither did he yearn for their pity. Even if the pain gutted him, even if it killed him, he would endure it. Mu Yunli peered down at him. "Tell me, what did you do to Chu Wanning?" she demanded. The pain compounded until his vision shimmered with hallucinations. He saw Chu Wanning becoming an immortal, 100 years in the future. He was as handsome and dignified as ever in robes white as snow. There was a sharpness to Chu Wanning when he wasn't smiling, but when he did, all those sharp edges melted into boundless warmth. "I didn't." Mu Yunli stared. Her red lips parted. "What?" "I misspoke." Every syllable was a croak forced through his throat. I never trespassed." He looked up, eyes bloodshot yet bright, as he bit out the final words. "Against my teacher." Mu Yunli was silent a moment, her expression difficult to read. She looked somewhat astonished, even at a loss, but her features were so forbidding that any emotion quickly iced over. "Continue," she said at last. Mo Run coughed up blood. He felt like his lungs had been crushed. Every breath reeked of iron. He sprawled on the ground, gasping, waiting for the truth potion's agony to subside. He was drenched in sweat, hair plastered to his forehead, one deathly pale cheek pressed to the stone. As if unable to stop herself, Mu Yunli took half a step forward. "Continue your confession," she said, glaring. As if unable to stop herself. What? Could that be a turn of phrase? Absolutely. However, Mo Run closed his eyes. "I have no more crimes to confess," he said hoarsely. At a gesture from Mu Yunli, a disciple came forward and collected some of Mo Run's blood, then smeared it onto another weight. This one was carved in relief with 2 seal script characters, merits and virtues. It was used to determine the achievements of the accused. Mu Yunli tossed the weights onto the scales. The balance slowly shifted. Everyone but Mo Run stared intently at the golden needle. Sunder the souls. Still sunder the souls. Slowly, the needle tilted. Sunder the souls. Whatever good Mo Run had done, it hadn't been enough to shift the needle away from sunder the souls. Shui Meng clutched his knees. The scimitar Longcheng laid over his lap. He stared at the scales, his expression dreadful. Trembling, he strained to keep his back as straight as possible. If he was to crumple now, it would be too hard to recover. His shaking palms were colder than Longcheng's dark blade. Mu Yunli's lovely eyes were trained unblinking on the golden scales. The needle's drift was slowing. It quivered around sunder the souls, as though about to halt. She swept back her sleeves. "Behold," she intoned, "the final decision has... It's still moving." Shui Gongzhe. Shui Meng glared down at her. He'd spoken up, even though his voice was painfully unsteady, even though he didn't know if he was right or wrong to do so. "The needle's still moving." "It's about to stop," Mu Yunli said. "Then wait for it to stop." Yeah, isn't that like your fucking job? Excuse me, we are talking about like you don't jump to conclude. You don't speak when it has to. I don't care how far into Sunder of the Souls it is. That's just basic fucking procedure. Is accuracy. The fuck are you talking about? That, more than anything else, and there's been a couple things, makes me think she's bought and paid for. Mu Yanli met Shui Meng's gaze. After a moment, her lips lifted in a cold, mocking smile. Fine. Let's wait for it to stop. The sun blazed down, its heat cloaking the ground in a haze of dust. Everyone held their breath, staring at that needle, waiting for it to halt. But strangely, even now, the needle continued to vacillate. As though unsure of how to judge Mo Wei Yu, it wobbled, then hesitantly veered toward more lenient punishments, inch by painstaking inch. This development seemed to have caught Mu Yanli off guard. She stood silently, her goldenrod yellow robes brushing the ground as she waited for the divine scales to reach their decision. Shui Meng's knuckles were white as he stared at the needle, as if it was arbitrating not merely the life of Mo Wei Yu, but all the years he and Mo Run had known one another. Their relationship had transformed from indifference to resentment, to acceptance, to understanding. Was it Shui Meng's initial aloofness that had been wrong? Or was it the "guh" he'd uttered later that was unacceptable? He didn't know. He stared at the needle, his heart shuddering. Only when he saw how it moved did he allow himself to hope. Don't stop. Please, keep going just a little more. See, it's almost there. Regardless of Mo Run's past transgressions, he'd shattered his spiritual core. No power remained to him. How could they still inflict the harshest possible punishment? How could they obliterate his souls? 1 inch, then another, then finally. Carve out the spiritual core, Mu Yanli announced expressionlessly. Her aura was perfectly impassive. Despite her billowing robes of warm gold, every inch of her emanated a frosty chill. The needle had stopped. Its tip pointed tremulously at carve out the spiritual core. Its final judgment of Mo Zongsha. No, sorry, of course, duh. Shimei had this happen, hoping that his spiritual core would get carved out so they can put it in Teishanjun and lay waste to everything. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. The second that they said, carve out the fucking on the scales, I should have. Mu Yanli turned to face the masses below and the members of the 10 great sects in the stands above. They were indeed the full 10, for Tianyin Pavilion had left untouched the old seats belonging to Ru Feng's sect. Now only one person sat there alone. Yuangshi, clad in black from head to toe. Nengongse's embroidered cloth quiver was slung over her shoulder. And now Baizhen, who'd lost his master forever, lay across her lap. Her complexion was wan, but her eyes were clear and sharp as she gazed down at the interrogation platform. You can't just update me like that. We're in the middle of stuff, Meat Bun. Things are happening. You can't just casually take a paragraph to update me on Yuangshi and now Baizhen. Also, like, we figured that now Baizhen was gonna go to Yuangshi because, like, of course. But getting that he's laying across her lap. Fuck this woman. Fuck this woman. The heavens are all-knowing and impartial, said Mu Yunli. Tianyin Pavilion has considered merits and errors alike, free from self-interest, bias, or animosity. We sentence Mo Run, Mo Wei Yu, to have his spiritual core carved out. We will allow 3 days to notify the public. If there are no objections after 3 days, we can object? Hang on, we can object. Form a line. I got plenty of objections. Can't even speak anymore. I will get behind Shui Jingyang, Shui Meng, and Madame Wang. Don't misunderstand. And Chu Aning, should he ever, be able to show up. I'll get behind them. But I would like to join the line. Shui Meng had been sitting in silence, eyes closed. But at this, he found himself unable to hold his tongue. He leapt to his feet in a flash of silver armor. I have an objection. Silence followed. Okay, Phoenix Wright. Come on now. I don't need to wait 3 days, Shui Meng said. I have an objection right now. Commotion broke out below. Xisheng Peak needs to close its fucking gates. What does he mean he has an objection? Might as well try Shui Jingyang and Shui Meng next and be done with it. They're probably all working together. Why else would he vouch for this monster? When the Zhenlong chess pieces attacked, why did they leave Xisheng Peak's people mostly unharmed? How could anyone believe they're innocent? Shui Meng's face was white with fury, but he had no choice but to rein in his anger. Although Mu Yunli had heard the other cultivators' cries, she appeared to ignore them. If young Shui Guangzhou wishes to speak, I will listen, she said coolly. Shui Meng's mouth opened, but he couldn't find the words. Overcome with worry, Madame Wang gently tugged at his sleeve. Meng Er, we have 3 days. Let's put our heads together and think about what we should say. But Shui Meng acted like he hadn't heard his mother. He stared at Mu Yunli, then at the scales. Finally, he shifted his gaze to that tiny, distant speck of black on the platform. Mo Run. His eyes seemed to waver, like a curtain rippling in the breeze. They didn't darken, but neither did they brighten. He blurted out, He doesn't have a spiritual core. What do you mean by this? Asked Mu Yunli. Shui Meng looked at her with new urgency. What do I mean? Don't you see? He's the one who saved you at Xisheng Peak, who forced those chess pieces to retreat. Pavilion Master Mu, how do you plan to carry out this sentence? His core has been shattered. I had this question too, but I was like, they could, I don't know, reach in, scoop up the pieces. I don't know. I figured they had some answer, otherwise that'd be moot. Oh, honey, don't float that possibility. What are you going to do? Carve out his heart? His eyes were stinging, his nails digging into his palms. Carve out the spiritual core. He doesn't have a spiritual core. So does that mean you'll take his life? Mu Yunli narrowed her eyes. Naturally, Tianyin Pavilion has its ways. A new voice sounded from the platforms. According to law, the punishment will be carried out 3 days after the sentencing. The crowd looked around for the speaker. It was Ye Wangxi. Pavilion Master, please describe how you plan to proceed. A Bhutan Manor disciple shouted, Now you're demanding answers. Who do you think you are? More people began to whisper beneath the stands. She really thinks she's something. What, just because Jiang Shi supports her? Because Nangong Se cleared Ru Fengsek's name with his death? This no-name bitch dares to question the master of Tianyin Pavilion. What gives her the right? Ye Wangxi gave these responses no acknowledgement. Someone who held a grudge against the Nangong clan yelled, Ye Wangxi, Ru Fengsek is dead. Do you think you're the Ru Fengsek leader just because you're sitting over there by yourself? Now Bai Jin, his spiritual energy still unrecovered, whimpered as Ye Wangxi held his small form to her chest. Her solitary figure stood calmly until those mocking, angry shouts gradually quieted. The commander of Rufang's Sect's Shadow City is still here, said Yuangshi. None of you have the right to decide whether or not it has died. Ah! My love for her continues to grow. Yuangshi didn't wish to waste her breath on these people. She turned her gaze to Mu Yunli. Pavilion Master, please explain. There are ways to restore a spiritual core, said Mu Yunli. Yes, his core has been shattered, but the fragments remain in his chest. The core doesn't need to be whole for it to be carved out. Shui Meng was white as paper. Then what do you plan to do? We will use a spell to excise all the fragments of his core. Dustpan, you know what I mean? Sweep it up. That's what I was saying. Mu Yunli answered. Tianyin Pavilion will not take his life. Before Mu Yunli could finish the word life, Shui Jingyang was on his feet. He cut her off, his face rolling like thunder. You'll carve out every fragment of his core? Correct. How many times will you have to open him up for this? The streaks of white at Shui Jingyang's temples made the fury in his panther-like gaze all the more stark. 5 times, 10. Carving out the spiritual core damages the heart. It's unimaginably painful when done even once. There was a prisoner several years ago who had her core carved out by Tianyin Pavilion. She died as soon as she returned to her cell that day. That only means her body was too weak to withstand it, Mu Yunli replied, unmoved. It is not the fault of Tianyin Pavilion. Then you might as well take his life outright, Shui Jingyang bellowed. Mu Yunli, his core is broken. You've made yourself clear. If his core is in 2 pieces, you'll cut him open twice. If it's in 3 pieces, 3 times. But what if it's in 100 pieces? 1,000 pieces? Do you intend to give him death by 1,000 cuts? It'll be torture. If it is indeed so broken, then such is his fate. Shui Jingyang fell silent. Fate. But wasn't everything fate? He suddenly felt the grand absurdity of it all. What was fate, after all? Because of fate, he'd mistakenly raised this boy as his own nephew. He'd given him a family and a teacher, a place to live, and a home to call his own. But what was this child's fate, as written? He was an abandoned bastard son who had never had enough to eat. He and his mother had eked out a living begging and panhandling. After his mother died, that frail wisp of a child had dragged his mother's festering corpse to a mass grave. With his own hands, he'd buried the only warmth he'd ever known. He'd been beaten and abused, locked in a cage, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. Everyone wished to believe the ways of the world were just, but in truth, fate was unfair from the moment of birth. Why was it that rich young masters lived in ostentatious wealth, their gold winning the smiles of many beautiful women, while destitute commoners languished just a few streets away, subsisting on ants, with no roof above their heads save for the sky? Why was it that some people were doted on by their mothers and wanted for nothing, while others had to bring their mother's body before the gates of a great sect, only to hear the words, "Beggars can't be choosers"? Why was it that some people were born in the dirt, while others were born into glory? It wasn't fair. Thank you. You can make this point as many times as you want, Meat Bun. When fate dumped its unfairness onto the most vulnerable, when a single price adjustment could steal away the people most dear to them, where then was justice? They too were living people. How could their hearts be free of resentment? How could they not hold a grudge? Write that the fuck down. Although this child had committed many wrongs, although he wasn't Shui Jingyang's nephew by blood, although fate had played a cruel trick on them, when he thought of all Mo Run had endured, his heart ached. Shui Jingyang closed his eyes. This is far too inhumane, he muttered. Perhaps the divine scales didn't consider the fact that his core has been shattered. Hundreds of times, Mu Yunli. He looked up, his voice shaking. You'll be taking the awl and driving it into his heart hundreds of times. It was a beautiful day. The entirety of Tianyin Pavilion was solemn and upright, everything in perfect order. Shui Jingyang lifted his face to look at the clouds drifting past overhead. All right, then. After this, he will have paid for his crimes. He will have given back everything he owes the world. The wind picked up. But as for what the world owes him, Shui Jingyang's voice caught. Will there be anyone to give it back? Will there be anyone to give it back to him? That's the end of the chapter. Oh, Jesus. We're going to go take the break. Hang on. Just hang on. I am going to just marinate in my love for Shui Jingyang during the break. When we come back, we will be on page 37 for chapter 272, which is called Poison Tongues. So that's what we're coming back to here in just a few minutes. Give the stream a like if you are on fire with the righteous injustice of it all. And I will be back here in just a few minutes to keep reading. I'll be right back. And we're back. We are on page 37 for chapter 272, which is called Poison Tongues. You know, this is classic redemption arc stuff. It's literal redemption arc stuff. Guy who did a lot of shit, you know, heals and turns around and starts doing good shit. And then in one way, shape, or form, at some point later on in the story, the good that he has done is weighed against the bad that he has done. And we're supposed to come to some kind of conclusion about it. Pure redemption arc. There's just literally a trial over it. The trial was adjourned. Though there were objections voiced, the outcome could not be changed. Then I would love to know what the fuck is the point of objections. Tianyin Pavilion's divine scales of justice had decided the fates of the cultivation realm's criminals for thousands of years. No one could escape this custom, least of all Mo Run. When everyone had left, Mo Run, bound by spells, shrouded in barriers, and encircled by guards, was brought to the platform of repentance outside the pavilion grounds. He was to kneel here for 3 days and 3 nights, subject to the taunts and jeers of passers-by, until the day his core was carved out. This served as public notice of his sentencing. In Tianyin Pavilion's guest house, Shui Meng couldn't sit still. At last he jumped to his feet. "Mom, Dad, I want to go see him." Madame Wang grabbed his arm. "No." She was rarely decisive, but now her manner brooked no resistance. "You can't go to the platform of repentance. You can't see him." "Why not? His mother shook her head. Xishang Peak is in a difficult position. How many called for the sect to be disbanded today? You and your father both need to stay calm and keep your heads down." I think I just accidentally turned 2 pages. I'm too beside myself. Pardon me. There we go. If Xishang Peak is condemned too, there will be no way out of this mess for anyone, Yu Hong and Renair included. "But will people really yell at him and curse him?" Shui Meng asked, dazed. "I don't know what happened with the Zhenlong chess formation. I don't know why he could stop those pawns, but..." Shui Meng buried his face in his hands, his voice thick with tears. "But he really was the one who saved us that day. Those people weren't there. They didn't see what happened. Why are they treating him like this when they've only heard one side of the story?" Well, that's usually what happens. They don't even need to hear the full side. Why? Shui Meng was too naive to understand, but Madame Wang and Shui Jingyang both knew. Tianyin Pavilion was the seat of justice in the cultivation realm. Its very name meant sound of heaven. If something had always been done a certain way, especially by an institution that had stood for thousands of years, very few would question if it was just, or whether it might be wrong. In the face of such power, any voice of dissent that spoke up would be easily drowned out. Getting a little too real in here. Mo Wei Yu was a criminal. Anyone could humiliate and abuse him because the target of their blows and insults was a man the world deemed a villain. We can't talk about prisoners' rights right now. I cannot go on the rant about prisoners' rights right now. Can't do that. We have to finish the stream. When they spat on him and punched him, it wasn't violence or blowing off steam or following the crowd or lashing out in jealousy. It wasn't even the satisfaction of hitting a bully when he was down. What they were doing was condemning evil and upholding justice. I can't get on my soapbox about cancel culture. I can't do it. We don't have time. Just like 10 seconds ago, we have to finish the stream. The masses delighted in his plight. Anyone who dared beg for mercy on his behalf was surely a co-conspirator. They too deserved to be dragged onto the interrogation platform, to have their faces smeared with paint, their hair hacked off. A bunch of degenerates without a moral compass. They would deserve it. Shui Meng could not go to the platform of repentance. Chaos would ensue if he did. That's a scene break. It began drizzling that evening. The platform of repentance was unsheltered, so Mo Run knelt in the mist, rivulets running down his face. He closed his eyes, but the rain wasn't enough to douse the enthusiasm of the thronging crowd. Many of the cultivators had left by this time. The crowd was mostly composed of ignorant commoners. These citizens of the upper cultivation realm knew nothing of cultivation, nor were they aware of the other strange and startling events that had recently transpired. What they did not lack was curiosity. Holding oil paper umbrellas, they gazed at the man bound to the platform. The stands had been too far away to get a good look at Mo Run earlier that day, but now that he was being displayed on the platform of repentance, these commoners could walk up and see the condemned for themselves. This morning, when I heard about all the things he did, I thought he'd be a terrifying brute, but he's actually pretty good looking, a girl murmured in surprise. The strapping young man beside her attentively adjusted her cloak. You're too naive. Plenty of good-looking people hide malice in their hearts. Don't let appearances deceive you. A man and woman with a young child had made the trip specifically for this viewing. The father, a refined-looking school teacher from the upper cultivation realm, lifted his son so he could see Mo Run kneeling on the ground. See? Make sure to behave yourself when you grow up. Don't end up like this monster. The child, no older than 6, was perplexed by the scene before him. Daddy, what did he do wrong? Why does he have to kneel here? He's committed too many crimes to name, the teacher said tartly. Tianyin Pavilion says he committed murder and arson, cultivated forbidden techniques, and faked his identity. This person has no shame or decency. He's a cold-blooded killer, worse than a beast. When you grow up, you must be the opposite of him. Got it? Got it. The father let out a breath of relief, only for the child to pipe up with, But Daddy, do you know him? Me? The man blinked. Of course I don't know him. Your daddy's the most upright scholar at Qingfeng Academy in the upper cultivation realm. I conduct myself with integrity and deal only with righteous gentlemen. How could I know someone engaged in such dark dealings? First of all, you're talking to a 6-year-old. Maybe we ease up on the rhetoric. He paused, then, as if to drive the point home, explained earnestly to his son, Ours is a family of scholars. We raise our sons with the most upstanding values. If we spoke to someone like him, we'd immediately find them filthy and repugnant. Got that? No, I mustn't go on my diatribe about how the perception that it's just all the old people who have all the really shitty backwards thinking and they'll die off someday and it'll be fine is a fallacy for this exact reason. They hand this shit down. The father let out a too angry, hopped up the page. This time, the child didn't answer directly. But Daddy, if you don't know him, how do you know he with effort, he parroted his father's words, that he's a cold-blooded killer and worse than a beast? Today's the first time we've ever seen him. Doesn't it take a long time to get to know someone? Like me and Xiaohua next door. It's passed down. Kids don't pop out of the womb knowing this shit. You don't understand. This is different, replied the teacher. The fact that she's calling him the teacher. He's already been found guilty. The child stared wide-eyed at Mo-Run. But this Gaga looks really pitiful. He doesn't look like a bad person. Could that pavilion thingy be wrong? The teacher had an inflexible temperament and shot down his son's questions without a second thought. You're only asking this because you're young. Ooh! This is like, what? The 8th fucking diatribe she's triggered in me that I cannot speak? For want of time? Ugh. You'll understand when you're older. Tianyin Pavilion has been the bastion of righteousness on Earth for thousands of years. It is the temple the gods themselves left behind. They never make mistakes. You'll understand when you're older. That reminds me of, all the old conservatives who were like, oh, well, yeah, sure, like you're young and liberal now, but wait till you get older. You'll just naturally turn conservative. Like, what is the, like, you'll get it when you get to be like our age. You'll be more conservative. Like, what is that perception that people just get more conservative as they get older? The assumption. The child put his fingers in his mouth and watched Mo run. Though he didn't seem to fully understand, neither did he speak in his defense again. Night descended, and the crowd slowly thinned. By midnight, the drizzle had become a downpour. No one remained. At daybreak, a peddler trudged by with his wares, headed for the morning market. The rain was coming down in sheets, and the wind was fierce. His stooped figure pushed his ramshackle wooden cart through the storm. Mo Run was half awake, his consciousness scattered. When he hazily heard the cart's wheels clattering against the bluestone road and the peddler's ragged breathing, he thought he was still on his travels during those 5 years he'd spent away from Susheng Peak. He'd squinted through hooded, unfocused eyes. Like a reflex honed during those days and nights he'd lost Chuaning, he felt an instinctive urge to lend a hand. He wanted to help this weary peddler push his cart over to the shelter of a tree, do whatever he could to ease his way. But he found he couldn't stand up. It was a slow moment before he remembered that those days of atonement were gone. In the present moment, Tianyin Pavilion had already convicted him. The wind gusted, blowing the tarp off the peddler's cart. The man lunged to grab it, but it was too late. The instant the tarp flapped loose, all the wares in his cart were drenched. The exhausted man had no choice but to frantically chase after the tarp in the rain. Mo Run watched in silence. He felt terrible for the peddler. He remembered his own mother dancing among knives for a copper coin. Always there were so many forced to brave the bitter winds and frigid rain to earn their keep, while others sheltered in comfort. Say it again, and keep saying it. He really wanted to help. In the quiet rain, he felt surprisingly calm. Memories drifted past. He remembered the cheerful proclamation he'd once made to his mother. Once I make something of myself, I'll build lots and lots of houses. That way everyone can have a place to live. No one will have to go hungry or cold anymore. But why did none of the Tianyin Pavilion disciples standing nearby step forward to help? It would take so little effort. Yet they only stood at attention, straight as a row of pines, representing Tianyin Pavilion in all its solemn dignity. They moved not a muscle, as though their bodies were made of stone, and their hearts much the same. The peddler scurried after the tarp as it flapped and tumbled in the wind. At last it came to a stop on the platform of repentance, right in front of Mo Run. A scrawny hand, leathery as old tree bark, grasped a corner of the tarp. Mo Run let out a sympathetic sigh of relief. But everything in the man's cart had already been ruined. The peddler's mood was foul, and he had no ready outlet for his frustration. He was gripping the tarp, chest aching with sorrow, when he sensed Mo Run's eyes on him. Whipping around, the peddler glared, then spat. Phlegm landed squarely on Mo Run's face. What are you looking at? You sorry excuse for a human. Even you think you can laugh at me, huh? You deserve what you got. You should be dead. The peddler wasn't satisfied, yet he didn't dare step closer. He picked a few rocks off the ground and hurled them at Mo Run. Tianyin Pavilion's disciples were accustomed to scenes like this. They'd often giggle among themselves and remark, "Of course anyone with a moral compass hates criminals. What's the problem if they land I'm too angry to speak. What's the problem if they land a few blows? They had a great deal of empathy for the feelings of the commoners and rarely stood in their way. The rocks didn't hurt much when they struck Mo Run's face and body, but he shivered under the blows. As he saw Mo Run's trembling and his pained expression, the peddler's own bad luck seemed to pale in comparison. Somewhat appeased, he gingerly picked his way back toward his cart and covered it once more with the tarp. His frail figure disappeared into the distance. The world was a blur of mist. The rain rinsed away the peddler's spittle, just as it did countless other stains. It felt heavier and heavier, leaving the mortal realm spotless. Fuck you. That's a scene break. At dawn the next day, the cultivators who had gathered at Tianyin Pavilion for the trial continued to leave through the city gates, passing Mo Run where he knelt. Some ignored him, while others made a point to express their contempt. A pair of black boots appeared in front of Mo Run. Then an umbrella opened, shielding him from the drizzle. Mo Run was asleep. He didn't notice anything had changed until he heard a voice call out, calm and refined, yet staunchly resolute. Open a barrier over him to block the rain. Without the pavilion master's express permission, we cannot make any changes to the platform of repentance. It's just a barrier. I'm sorry, but we can't. Mo Run opened bleary eyes. He saw a tall man. No, not a man. Yuangshi. There's still time before the punishment is carried out, said Yuangshi firmly. You shouldn't treat him like this. Shouldn't treat him like what? One of the disciples frowned. Monsieur, please mind your words. Tianyin Pavilion has acted according to law. It's the heavens that disapprove of him and sent this rain. We haven't inflicted any additional punishment on him. Yuangshi's eyes flashed with anger. How have you not? You've made him kneel in the rain all night long, from dusk till dawn. If I didn't see this today... A group from Baton Manor walked by. Jen Songming with a gaggle of shidi. Overhearing the commotion, Jen Songming glanced over and sneered, Hi, look there. The commander of Rufeng's Shadow City is meddling in other people's business again. She's holding an umbrella for the criminal. More passers-by began to gather, whispering among themselves. Several female cultivators rolled their eyes at Yuangshi, muttering in loud whispers, I heard the man in black who defended Yuangshi at Rufeng sect was none other than Mo Run. What? I had no idea. This brute was the one who helped her. Mo Run even killed the woman who raised him. Why did he treat Yuangshi so well? There was a dramatic pause as one of them covered her mouth with a handkerchief, eyes wide with shock. Oh my, you don't think the two of them are... No one was foolish enough to say it out loud, but disgust and excitement flitted across every face as they thought of the wild possibilities. The thrill was like a powerful, unrelenting torrent, washing over the crowd and spreading through the misting rain. They stared at the two figures on the platform, a man and a woman. Why would a woman willingly help a man who'd fallen into misfortune? Because she'd slept with him? She definitely slept with him. She must be hopelessly in love with him, drowning in infatuation as they tangled passionately in bed. Like the checkout aisle at the supermarket. How filthy. Mo Run glanced up at Yuangshi. The first time he tried to speak, nothing came out. He swallowed, then tried again. Monsieur. You're awake. Yuangshi lowered her head, mild and courteous as ever. You should go. Don't stand here and let them drag you into this too. But Yuangshi didn't move from her spot. Leaning down, she produced a bottle of warm water and uncapped it, balancing the umbrella in one hand. The canopy canted slightly, sending raindrops rolling down onto her shoulder. Drink some. Monsieur, the Tianyin Pavilion disciple called out. Feeding prisoners is not allowed, but throwing stones at them is. Say it again, say it louder. Although Yuangshi hadn't witnessed the events of last night, the ground around Mo Run was littered with rocks of all sizes, and his cheeks and forehead were covered in muddy scrapes. As she glared at the disciples, her gaze held some of Nangongse's fierceness. His beloved shadow still lingered upon her. Isn't Tianyin Pavilion supposed to do things the right way? Is this what you call justice? Unable to defend themselves, the disciples fell silent. Their leader cleared his throat, looking embarrassed. Water is fine, but no food. Yuangshi helped Mo Run drink some water. Why? Mo Run mumbled. You helped us, Yuangshi said without looking up. You helped me too. On Mount Jiao, if I died instead, the Nengong. Yuangshi's hand stilled. A shudder ran through her. Yet she replied, anyone would want to live. I would never blame you for wanting to live. I just got lightheaded with my love for her. It's all right. Mo Run couldn't respond. Drink, she urged. Shuimeng can't come. His parents won't allow it. I'll hold the umbrella for you. You once helped Asa and me though the whole world stood against us. Now I will help you even if no one else stands with you. Her expression was reserved but determined. I'm here. Yuangshi kept her word and remained by Mo Run's side. Tianyin Pavilion wouldn't allow a barrier, so she held the umbrella aloft, tilting it slightly to block the rain from Mo Run. With her keeping watch, no one dared throw stones at Mo Run, but the onlookers' insults grew increasingly nasty. Genderless freak, beast in human clothing, slut with no standards, craven murderer. Those eager to make accusations could always find some fault. Oh, write that the fuck down. Repeating it. Those eager to make accusations could always find some fault. Everyone knew this kneeling man would never be pardoned, and that the woman who stood by him had lost her sect. They had no one else to rely on. No matter what kind of abuse was hurled at them, who would speak up on their behalf? Mo Run only now discovered how many courageous warriors there were in the world. They seemed to sprout everywhere, like bamboo shoots after the rain. Every one of them was so upstanding, so indignant, so fearless in calling out evil. One wondered where all these heroes had been in the past. Tianyin Pavilion's trials were rare events. It would likely be another decade before anyone received such an honor. Curious spectators came and went in waves, like the rise and fall of the tide. This Mo Run once did quite a few good deeds, someone remarked. Do you think he had ulterior motives all along? He even stayed in our village once, a violent murderer living among us. How terrifying to think back on it now. I heard his mother was Duan Yuan. Did you know about that? Duan Yuan, that celebrated goddess of music, the speaker asked in astonishment. But I thought she was a good person. I heard she was talented and gentle, a woman of class, with a kind heart. What do men know? Someone else interjected darkly. Wasn't Duan Yuan a whore? Times certainly have changed if even whores can be said to have class. No one has any sense of propriety anymore. I wish I could have, like, a counter for the number of sighs that I have had to heave. Peeved, the man who'd been told off shot back. Duan Yihan was a songstress, not a prostitute. She made her living in entertainment houses for years, but she never took any clients. You only think she never took clients because you're poor. A woman like that only cares about money and status. She has no honor to defend. A new voice chimed in, indignant. What's the difference between a songstress and a prostitute anyway? None of them have any dignity. People these days are so quick to speak up for a prostitute. The upper cultivation realm has really gone to the dogs. I mean, they used to equate actresses with prostitutes, so honestly, this tracks. The final speaker was none other than the school teacher who'd brought his son the day before. Today he was carrying a stack of books instead of his child, and a group of students trailed behind him. The teacher raised his chin, secure in his righteousness. Someone in the crowd recognized him and called out a courteous greeting. It better not be the same. It better not be the same family. It's gonna be the same family. It better not be the same family. Ma, Shang, your class has let out early today. You can only learn so much from books, said the teacher. I ended class early so my students could receive some practical instruction in the ways of the world. He shot a sidelong glance at the young master who'd come to Duan Yihan's defense and snorted. Though I hadn't expected to hear such vulgar drivel here. Young man, you've truly broadened my horizons. I despair for the future of our beloved upper cultivation realm. That's right. It's just as Ma Xiansheng says. A paragon of virtue. A worthy teacher, and a true scholar. Duan Yihan's defender flushed with embarrassment and anger, but he was surrounded by taunts. He could do nothing but shake out his sleeves and leave. At first, Mo Run was incensed by such exchanges, but eventually all he felt was powerlessness. He couldn't stop these people from tarnishing his late mother's name with such foul accusations. Before she died, his mother had always urged him to repay kindness instead of seeking revenge. Now he had no choice but to allow her memory to be shredded in these onlookers' vicious mouths, as they called her a whore, a slut, a bitch who'd brought evil into this world. He couldn't stop them from speaking. Yuangshi held her tongue for a time, but soon even she couldn't stand it any longer. She stepped forward, ready to argue with the jeering crowd below. Don't bother, Mo Run called out softly, stopping her in her tracks. There's no point. She came back to his side. The rain had stopped, but she still held the umbrella as though its flimsy paper could afford him some protection. Mo Run looked up at her. After a pause, he insisted hoarsely, Don't stay here with me any longer, Monsieur. If you still trust me, return to Tianyun Pavilion and find Shui Meng and the others from Xisheng Peak. Tell them. He fell silent. He could barely summon the strength to speak. Tell them they have to come up with a way to track down Hua Binan as soon as possible. They have to find my Shizhen. His heart seized when he mentioned Zhuaning. Where was he? From what Shimei had said, he didn't intend to harm him. But then where did he take him? What would he force him to do? Mo Run couldn't bear to think about it. The first forbidden technique has already been unleashed. You have to be ready. Mo Run's lashes trembled. I won't be able to stop a second attack, but a second attack will definitely come. Please believe me. I have no hidden agenda. I just want to stop this. in his head. We can't let this go on. I don't want history to repeat itself. I don't want to see Chuaning summon Huasha a second time. I don't want him to sacrifice himself to mend this broken world. Not again. That's the end of the chapter. I'm just checking real quick to see if we are indeed stopping here, because I believe we are. We're on page 51 for chapter 273, which is called Divergent Paths. I feel like the paths have been diverged for a little while now, so having something titled Divergent Paths is a little like, what, are we going to get even farther apart? I didn't think that was terribly possible, but that is indeed where we're stopping for today. Gonna have to go let the tension out of my shoulders again. So, to recap, Mo-Run is due to have whatever the hell remains of his spiritual core forcibly removed, which is presumably what Hua Binan's whole goal is, in order to claim them somehow. I don't know. What happens with criminals' cores when they have to be forcibly removed? Do you just like chuck them somewhere? I don't know. But wherever it goes, I'm sure Shimei is gonna find a way to get his hands on it. Oh yes, and of course, you know, having this removed is almost certainly gonna kill him, which actually makes me feel better, sort of, because then if it gets to where the extraction has like started and actually goes through, then there's gonna be something that comes in to change the situation at least enough to get him out of there with his life. I am terrified at what it might have to cost, because I just don't think Shui Jingyang is getting out of this alive. So like if his interference somehow, you know, I don't know. But, I mean, Liv makes a good point. Listen, I'm for another Underworld run with Chu Wanning. This is true. You know, if he just flat out dies, then we went to the Underworld for Chu Wanning. We can go to the Underworld for Mo-Run, except I'm pretty sure we don't have, you know, Wise Wei anymore. I'm gonna go explode. She poked just so many of my buttons. Deliberately. She succeeded. She did a very good job. But I now must go breathe. So that is what I am going to go do. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you had a time, good or otherwise. And we'll be back on Tuesday to continue reading Volume 9 of Erha. And we will be meeting ahead of time at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday to have a chat about what we read today. And that is available for YouTube members and patrons. I love you all very, 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 very much. Please have a lovely weekend. And take care of yourselves, please. And I'll see you in a few days.